Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media outlets, we say good morning, universe, and welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Alongside Ezra Ginsburg, alongside Dave Minuk, I am your host, Drew Mindell. We're back from our August hiatus. Summer vacation is over. We're back to talking about the Winnipeg Jets. We're back.
I don't know if it's over for Dave M, actually, Drew.
Well, that's true. Dave M is joining us from an exotic locale on this Saturday morning, enjoying the last few moments of summer. Are the leaves starting to change yet up there in Riding Mountain National Park, Mr. Minuk?
Not yet. It's looking good here in Riding Mountain. It's a great place to be, great place to spend a weekend. So I'm trying to suck out a few more days of summer. It was gorgeous though, 27 yesterday. So good
that's
time.
better. That's better weather than I had when I was there about 3 weeks ago. We were there, unfortunately, during a rainy week, but I'll give credit to my children. They were troopers. Even though it was raining, they were outside. They were into the hikes. They were into the walks. They were all too eager to keep doing things outside, despite a little bit of inclement weather. But clearly not a problem that you're facing on this Saturday morning, Mr. Ginsburg. You look like you're 12 years old again, clean shaven, ready to new year, new you, that whole thing. Nice to see you there, Yazzie.
Yeah, of course. Nice to see you, boys. It's good to get back at it. It was nice to have that little break, but let's be honest here. Like, we have too much to talk about, and it's hockey season now. So, I just needed to kind of shave that off to kind of a new start. Like, it's funny because Naomi was bugging me saying that I was doing it because we were back on air, but for me, it's just I'm such a hairy dude that my beard's going to be back in about 24 hours. So, just something a little bit different. I always like to shock Drew. Most importantly, boys, just excited to get back talking hockey. It's going to happen, very quickly. That training camp is here, and then, into the preseason. It's kind of like early July when it seemed like, the Stanley Cup playoffs were over and we were going to have this, long break. And then a couple of weeks later, you had the expansion draft and the NHL draft and free agency. And then all of a sudden we were doing a radio show every single day. Right. So let's do this, boys.
For a while there, that certainly felt like it was. Nice to see so many new faces. Nice to see so many familiar faces joining us in the chat room on this Saturday morning. We hope that everybody had a lovely summer vacation. If they were able to get away for a couple of days, drop some of your comments in there. Let us know what you did on your summer break. Maybe we'll throw it up on the screen throughout the course of the show. Nice, like I said, nice to see so many of you. And remember, if you're new here and if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the like button. Wow, Dave Minuk already getting called out for being rude at the bank on Thursday.
Whoa. No, I'm not. Mark, Max, sorry, good to see you. I'm not getting called out. I think he was just saying to me, he said he.
Oh, you're right. I read it incorrectly. Mac was the one who rudely interrupted you at the bank on Thursday night.
I was happy to talk to Mac, but he was. It was just kind of two ships passing in the night.
Who goes to a bank in person anymore?
I went to the bank the other day. I had to get something, but usually I just it is very rare for me to actually go to the bank in person.
What were you getting, Drew? Traveler's checks? Like, why can't you just do that on the phone?
Well, I had to get a certified check to
Okay.
We bought a new car. Yeah, but
wow. What kind of car?
Well, we bought a new car because the other car got written off, so it's less exciting than it might be. But nonetheless, I did have to go to the bank briefly, but that was the first time in a long while that I've been to the bank.
So what kind of Range Rover did you get, Drew?
I did not. I did not get anything fancy. I'm not a fancy car guy. I'm not going to be on the cover of Car and Driver magazine or anything like that anytime soon.
As long as everyone's safe. I didn't realize that you were in a car accident. You were true to your word, and you didn't talk to me for 5 weeks. So
it was really quite lovely.
I have no idea what's going on in your life. Like, you might have learned how to speak another language. I have no idea. But as long as everyone's healthy, that's obviously what matters from a guy that's been in at least 12 car crashes.
That's true. You have a reputation for getting getting into some car accidents. It was Laura and Aaron. Everybody was fine. That was the most important part. The car less so, but everybody was okay. So that's good to get out of the way on this Saturday morning. I see some people asking about merchandise, things of that nature. Stay tuned. I see merchandise is coming very soon, definitely in time for the start of the regular season, so you can get the 2021-22 Winnipeg Jets season off to a good start with your brand new Illegal Curve merchandise. I saw that Ty and the Brokery wanted to mention that in the chat. The rest of our stuff, yes, is in the wash, Ty. So be sure to stay tuned for details on the IC merchandise.
Yeah, no, I've got my shirt here.
This is that's true. As he's wearing his IC shirts.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody wants this shirt, I mean, I'm 240 pounds, so this is a double XL. So if anybody wants my shirt, just DM me and I'll send it to you.
There you go. Shirt off your back. It brings as you bring a whole new meaning to that in a separate way entirely. Let's get started talking about the Winnipeg Jets. We've had enough little banter to start on this Saturday morning. Let's look back really basically on what the offseason was for the Winnipeg Jets, because it was a active offseason. It was a busy offseason, and I think from all perspectives, it was an effective offseason for Winnipeg Jets general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. Gentlemen, as I sit here today, and we're going to look at the forward group, and we're going to look at the defense group, and we're going to look at them separately. As I sit here today, I believe this Winnipeg Jets team is a better team than the team that made it to the second round, and then albeit got swept by the Montreal Canadiens. But you look up and down the roster, forward and defense, and you look at what was subtracted off the roster, and you look what was added to the roster. And to me, I would say that the Winnipeg Jets are better today than they were when the season ended a couple months ago.
Yeah, I don't know how you argue against that, Drew. And I think that in my eyes, this is the best team that the Jets have had since the run in 2017-18. And maybe this team's even better when you consider that, some of those young forwards are now older and they're better. Like, for example, I think, Nikolai Ehlers is a better player. Like back in 2018, he was a great player, but he's even better now. Like Mark Scheifele is a better player. And, there's a strong argument to be made that they're stronger up the middle, right? Because you've still got the same players minus, Brian Little, who's obviously on LTIR, but then you throw in Pierre-Luc Dubois and obviously, Paul Stastny, we'll get into that later. Like, I think there's a good chance that, Paul Stastny plays on the wing this year. I just don't think that you want to have Pierre-Luc Dubois as a winger. You brought him in to be a 1B center, but regardless, this is a much more talented team than the team that was swept against the Montreal Canadiens. And boys, a lot of that obviously has to do with bringing in Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, right? Like Chevy checked off the big to-dos on his list. And I think, the key thing with those moves is you didn't have to give up anybody. You didn't have to sacrifice any of your forward depth, right? Like you lost Mason Appleton in the expansion draft, but you didn't have to give up anybody. It's not like the Jets have any big holes now in their roster, right? Like you've brought in Riley Nash, who, is your presumptive fourth line center right now. We'll see what happens, but you're going to have some battles, to replace Mason Appleton on that third line, right? Like I think, Dave has mentioned this before, even though I think you want Christian Vesalainen to be in more of a scoring role, I think Vesalainen is a guy that could get a look there. Maybe a guy like David Gustafsson, Dave M has talked about maybe he starts on the wing, even though he's a natural center. Jansen Harkins, even though you think he's maybe, more of a candidate for the fourth line, maybe he gets a look on that, quote unquote, checking third line. So there's no doubt that, this Jets team on paper right now is going to be better. And I would say, as we sit here, on September 11th, and obviously, we have to, remember, all the lives that were lost and all the people that continue to be affected here. It's just unfortunate that, we're back on air on September 11th. So we have to get that in there. Obviously Ace Bailey and, Mark Bavis lost their lives. They were LA King scouts. So we have to get that in there. But, there's no doubt that as we sit here right now, I would say that this is the second best team in the Central Division. I mean, I think everybody would say Colorado is the best team, but tell me one other team right now that is head and shoulders or clearly better than the Jets. I mean, maybe you're going to say St. Louis, maybe Dallas. I have no idea, but right now in a tight Central Division, I think the Jets are probably on paper the second best team.
Dave, as he said, second best, looking at the roster, looking at the subtractions. I mean, as you mentioned, Mason Appleton, you have to mention Matthew Perreault, who elected to go, try play for the Montreal Canadiens, go back home to Quebec, maybe a bit of an expanded role, more opportunity available for him there. That was sort of what he said as he was departing. Would you agree with that assessment that, you look at this team, and would you say second best in the Central? Would you say, higher? Would you say lower? It's sort of, how do you assess the team as we sit here on, in the first couple of weeks of September?
No, I think as he hit it out of the park with his assessment, I think that the Jets are clearly a better team. I think, it's kind of ironic that they're going to be forced to use some of their guys that maybe wouldn't have gotten the opportunity, David Gustafson, Christian Vesalainen, guys who are ready for the opportunity, ready to at least, challenge for the opportunity. I like the addition of Riley Nash. I think he's, a very good, he's not going to bring you any offense, but he's a very responsible, defensive center. So that's not a bad thing. You can play on the wing if he needs to with, Copp and Lowry, but ideally you throw him there maybe in that fourth line center role. If you don't want to give David Gustafson that opportunity, I mean, again, I think he's earned it with the Manitoba Moose, what he's been able to do for them, play in every situation. That's the beauty of it. Like, I thought it was interesting, when I was talking to Nate Schmidt, I did a one-on-one with him a few weeks ago, and he just talked about making the switch from, even though he's a left shot defenseman, to the right side. And he said, I wasn't going to come in Washington and take a spot on the left side. So he goes, I can do it. When the coaches say, can you go to the right side? He goes, yes. Can you play wing? Yes. Can you play center? Yes. Like, you just do it. And the truth is that, like, these guys, like Paul Maurice often said, we don't want guys who are just able to do one thing. Well, a guy like David Gustafson, again, fans won't be surprised to hear me say this because they've been hearing me say this for a long time. He can do everything. He can play PK. He can play power play, which obviously he won't do with the Jets, but he can do that. Does that with the Moose, and he gets first line center minutes. So, I mean, the truth is that he's a player who, if given the opportunity, will, I think, surprise some folks and can challenge and maybe provide something that guys like Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis, a little more offense than we see from those guys. So I think the Jets are in a good, kind of a forced good position in that regard in the terms of their third and fourth lines. And obviously, one player that I didn't mention, but yeah, could factor in is Cole Perfetti, right? I mean, the Jets 2020 first rounder looked really good last year in the AHL. There's going to be an exemption, I should say, for the AHL this year, right? For players who have played more than 30 AHL games last year. So him, he'll be able to play in the AHL next year or in the NHL if he can make it. So there's another player. You don't want to rush him in too early, but if he comes in the right fashion, you never say never. He could play, on this Jets team. So I think they have a lot of better options now. They've got the same good core, plus they've got some young, players who are ready to take that next step, or at least challenge for that next step, and not be, thrown behind veterans who are, trusted by the coaching staff. But again, kind of, what you're getting in them.
One of the fascinating subplots to this offseason had to do with Andrew Copp and what his status was going to be. Was he going to be a long-term member of the Winnipeg Jets? Was he going to be potentially dealt? And he ends up signing the 1-year contract, avoiding arbitration after he filed for arbitration. Him and Pionk both filed for arbitration, as you would expect, and then they both avoided the arbitration. He's got that 1-year deal. He's an unrestricted free agent at season's end. What do you think about that approach? Because I think for the most part, nobody necessarily expected the Jets to sign Copp for just that 1 year and potentially have him walk into unrestricted free agency. So what do you think about how that played out over the course of the summer? I think it was back, if my notes are correct here, it was August 12th, pardon me, when Copp signed that 1-year deal. So, we haven't had a real chance to really discuss that in any in-depth fashion. What do you think about that and how that played out over the course of the summer?
Yeah, there's no doubt, Drew, that, Copp is going to be one of those intriguing players, in addition to, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Nate Schmidt, you talked about Brendan Dillon. I mean, I think fans are expecting, again, a lot out of Mark Scheifele, who's obviously going to miss a few games at the beginning of the season. But yeah, I'm on the record. I mean, in the summer, I was saying I thought it was going to be, very unlikely that Copp signed a 1-year deal for the simple fact that, then he's heading into unrestricted free agency. But I think a lot of the reasons why Copp signed the 1-year deal is because, Pionk, got a raise, and, the Jets brought in Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, and they were right up against the salary cap. I think if you had, an extra $1 million of room, then there's a good chance that we know that the Jets wanted to sign Copp to a long-term deal, right? And then obviously there were rumors, that Copp might be traded, if the Jets couldn't come to terms on a long-term deal. Well, it's clear that Copp has accepted, a 1-year deal when he could have made a lot more money, elsewhere, right? Like, obviously he's an RFA, so he couldn't just go elsewhere. But the point is, like, he clearly is, gambling on himself. And I don't think it's necessarily really gambling when, he's proven to be such a consistent player, right? Like, he just had his best offensive year in terms of, points per game and goals per game and everything like that. So yeah, I was surprised at the time, but really, if you think about it, I mean, Copp wants to be in Winnipeg. The Jets want to sign Winnipeg. It just is a consideration, a salary cap issue right now, or back then. It still is. The Jets are, one of the, teams at the top of the salary cap. You look at cap friendly, the Jets are right up there, right? So
they have no cap space.
They have no cap space. So
or Copp space, right. if you want to. Yeah,
I like
making a Saturday morning
one. That's not bad. I usually find you unfunny, Drew, but that was a good one. But yeah, I mean, Copp is a guy. Again, you just pencil in on that third line with Adam Lowry. You just know he's going to be there, and he's also going to be a guy that can move up in the lineup, right? Like, we've talked about it. You can put him on the first line. You can put him on the second line. He can play center. He can play wing. He can play penalty kill. He can play power play. He is the definition of the Swiss Army knife, even though he's from Michigan. So, like, it's not a surprise in that sense. But yeah, Drew, I was expecting, probably a 4 or 5 year deal. But as we know, hockey's a business. And so, this year, if he does everything right, which, we expect him to do, puts up good numbers, he's probably going to get himself like a 4 or 5 year deal.
Dave, does Andrew Copp, this is a guy who, has been very honest about when he sort of played with a chip on his shoulder, and he was coming off a bit of a contract where, he thought he was underpaid, and he probably was underpaid based on the arbitrator's ruling, from a couple of years ago. So, do you think that he is channeling that emotion this year? I mean, he had a great year last year, albeit in the shortened season. If Andrew Copp proves to be, a consistent 50-point guy like he was on pace for last year, could you see come January 1st that long-term deal, come to fruition? Maybe he takes some of that Paul Stastny money. You add the Stastny money to what Copp is currently making, because Stastny's off the books at the end of the year. Maybe there is enough room to keep Andrew Copp. And, so the first, let's say 40, 50, 60 games of this year really might be a telltale sign for Andrew Copp and his future here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think that's true, Drew. I was even surprised he signed at the number he ended up signing for. I still thought he was going to try and hold out for a number over 4. So when the number actually came in, I was actually rather surprised. It still leaves, Larry Simmons, assistant GM of the Winnipeg Jets, and the rest of his cap crew. They're going to be busy this year when trying to work everything out, trying to figure out, LTIR and player performance bonuses. And it's going to be an interesting one from their perspective. They're going to be very busy, the Jets Brain Trust for sure in that regard. But no, I mean, I think you guys are both right. I think that there's a very good chance. I think Andrew Copp, the situation isn't as good for him. It's not as favorable, I would say, because he's more likely to play less primetime minutes. But again, there's injuries and that sort of thing. So you never know what's going to happen. And we never know what camp battles will reveal, like as I have a fly on my nose. So it'll be a question as to whether, a guy like Cole Perfetti could end up seizing that role. And like I said, we have no idea what it'll look like. That's kind of the joy of training camp, is to see what's going to happen and what the results are going to be. But the way it would set up right now, it really is you have that. See, in the end, if it proves to be a good kind of Kevin LeBanc situation in San Jose, where he hits a little with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you take a better deal.
For the record, with LeBanc, because you mentioned my bugaboo there, Mr. Minuk. With LeBanc, you knew that there was a contract in the drawer for him already. Right. I don't believe there's a contract in the drawer for him.
No, I don't think so either. But I'm just saying, I don't think there's an actual contract. I just think that they will have discussed, obviously, potential down the road opportunities. And I just think, I think Andrew Copp also knows that this group, the way it's constructed, has a good chance to challenge for a Stanley Cup. So from his perspective, probably made sense to leave a little bit of money on the table and say, okay, let's just do what this team can, put this team into the best position possible to go for it this year. Because we've talked about it. They needed to do this. There's no sugarcoating it. The defense prospects are still very young, right? We've gone through them. We know who they are. Everybody knows who they are. But again, the Ville Heinolas, the Dylan Sandbergs, the Johnny Kovacevic, the Leon Gavankes, those guys are Declan Chisholm. Those are all young defensive prospects that have, really good potential, especially a guy like Ville Heinola, who's probably the most NHL ready of the bunch. But at the same time, would the Jets be in a situation where they're trusting those guys and wanting to put them into the situations? I don't know. So I think from a perspective of the way, if I'm Andrew Copp, I looked at this group, the moves they made, I'm happy because I think to myself, this is a good Jets team that can challenge with Connor Hellebuck in net for a Stanley Cup.
And just to kind of further Dave's point, that is the key there. That you brought back Paul Stastny, you brought in Nate Schmidt, you brought in Brendan Dillon, signed Riley Nash, who I agree, the underrated signing. A guy, if you look at his advanced stats, especially recently on Toronto, he's a very reliable two-way forward, not a guy that's going to produce a lot of offense, but mainly Stastny, Schmidt, and Dillon. This is a team. Dave mentioned his chat with Nate Schmidt a couple of weeks ago. I mean, he said it. He's like, this is not a rebuilding team. The Jets want to win the Stanley Cup this year. This is like I said with 2018. I don't think the expectations, and this is something we're probably going to talk about here, leading up to training camp and going into the preseason and regular season. This Jets team has higher expectations than they've had the last few years. When you bring in those types of players and you make those types of commitments, and as we talked about, when you're that high up in terms of the salary cap, you're not just happy to get to the second round, right? You want to win the Stanley Cup. This is a team that has Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck, Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers, Josh Morrissey. All of these guys are in their prime. It's not like they're a couple of years away from their prime. This is a really good team. And you throw in some good young prospects. So I think Dave makes a good point there. When Andrew Copp sees Neil Pionk re-signed and he sees, okay, Paul Stastny's coming back. Okay, Nate Schmidt's coming in, another member of the Minnesota Mafia. He says, okay, yeah, the one-year deal might not be ideal, but I know that I'm not going to get paid. And if it's not by the Jets, it's going to be by another team. You don't think there's going to be a handful of teams that would love to have an Andrew Copp on their team? I mean, he's a very well-regarded player around the NHL. So, his next contract, he's going to get paid. There's no doubt about that.
Well, let's look at the forward group in a larger sense. There's right now the Jets have 13 forwards under NHL contract. That doesn't include Cole Perfetti. So of those 13 forwards, who do you think? I mean, obviously Mark Scheifele is going to be the quote unquote odd man out to start the regular season because he's going to be serving that suspension for another couple games. But of those 13 forwards, One game. Of those 13 forwards, who do you think is sort of most likely not to be, one of the Jets' main forwards? Is it a guy like Dominic Toninato who signed that 2-year deal? Is it a guy like Jansen Harkins who we all had pegged as a regular last season and then never was able to really get out of the doghouse of Paul Maurice, for lack of description? I mean, is it David Gustafsson, who most people thought was going to be the fourth line center, and then Riley Nash got signed? If you look at that forward group for the Jets, who do you think is not going to be the regular night in, night out, injuries notwithstanding?
I'll go first, Dave. I think it's hard to say at this moment, right? If you think about it, kind of, in simplistic terms, and obviously I like to look at things in simplistic terms, that, Drew, but I mean, the regulars,
it's a big word for you though.
They're exactly the regulars in the lineup that, from last year that there are now, holes to fill. I mean, Mason Appleton and Matty Perreault, right? Bottom six, third line and fourth line, right? So, I mean, I would say that the front runner to take one of those spots, it would be Christian Vesalainen, right? And I know that, when you talk about, line mates, Adam Lowry, Andrew Copp, that might not be ideal for Christian Vesalainen. But so regardless of that, I think Vesalainen is a guy that I have in the Jets top 12. Now, in terms of, that other spot, I would probably lean towards Jansen Harkins just based on, how many years he's been playing pro hockey. But, so, I mean, does that mean Dominic Toninato is your 13th forward? Probably. I mean, where does that leave David Gustafson? And again, this is all just my opinion, guys, and all speculation. But yeah, I mean, the Jets forward depth is, just as good as it's ever been, if you think about it right now, because you have guys, pushing for full-time NHL duty. And Dave makes a good point. Like, does Cole Perfetti factor in? And if he does factor in, is that at the beginning of the season or is that later in the season, right? Because I think Dave's right. I think there's a good chance you're going to see Perfetti play, in the AHL. It's not a guarantee, but like, what else does he have to accomplish at the Ontario Hockey League level?
Nothing.
I don't know.
I mean, it's AHL or NHL.
I would agree.
Perfetti.
Yeah. So you factor that in, Drew, and then you say, okay, well, if Perfetti's going to play, Perfetti's not going to be on the fourth line, maybe to start, but you got to think, Perfetti's a guy that, could get a look on the second or third line, right? So then that might squeeze a guy like Jansen Harkins out of that fourth line role. And then I don't know, right? Because I don't think Christian Vesalainen, with all of his offensive talent, is a guy that you necessarily want to be playing, 8, 9, 10 minutes a night. So, it's really hard to say right now, but those are going to be the intriguing training camp battles. We know, who's most likely going to be in the Jets top 6. It really just, depends on, you have to move the pieces around, right? Like, where's Paul Stastny going to play? Is it going to be on the wing? I think it could be. And then, you expect a good chance that, Connor Scheifele-Wheeler is going to be your top line, but we all know that, Nikolai Ehlers probably deserves to be on that top line. So those are going to be the main battles, but I would say probably Vesalainen and Harkins have the edge. But I really don't feel confident in saying that, to be honest with you.
I think the battles up front for the forward group are probably some of the most intriguing part of training camp. I think would be seeing how they're used, and it's a good point that Charles makes in the chat room, is that Svechnikov was signed by the Winnipeg Jets, or technically by the Manitoba Moose, I believe, with and the expectation is that he's going to be at training camp. Svechnikov obviously used to play with Detroit, a former first round pick, 14th overall, something like that. I think in that range. 15th, so you never know. 15th. Okay, I was close. I said it's somewhere in that range.
Should note, Drew, too, that he played for Cape Breton Screaming Eagles with PLD.
That's right. So there is some familiarity with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he's just another, he's another guy who's definitely flying underneath the radar. But, as a guy who formerly was a first round pick, you would think that he's got some talent that he might be able to maybe recapture after playing, on just some horrendous Detroit Red Wings teams over the last number of years. The battle up front for the forward group, Dave, I think.
Sorry, I'm wrong. It was 19th.
Sorry, 19th. Okay, we'll let it slide.
The Jets took Kyle Connor, and then Detroit took Svechnikov a couple picks later.
Who did Boston take?
Nobody that they should have taken in hindsight, but that's always 2020. But I mean, I think, Dave, from the training camp forward battles are really going to be interesting. Once that gets started, probably in another 10 days time, give or take. I think it's 2 weeks from today that the first exhibition game is. The Leafs and the Habs are playing an exhibition game 2 weeks from today, or 13 days from today or something. So training camp is rapidly approaching. So there are some intriguing battles, especially up front, Dave.
Well, and as Trini KP says, I believe a winner of IC merch. We still have some IC merch to give away, by the way, boys. Austin Bugnaski, who was, I think, like the third overall scorer in the Beauty League, was ripping it up. I asked Nate Schmidt. He said he could be the Jets' leading scorer by December potentially. So another guy that should be focused on. Good point by Trini. But
it's no joke though. Pagansky. Sorry, I was just going to say, Dave Pagansky. I watched him several times. On my travels to Grand Forks, watching him play for UND. And you would know too, like, this is a guy that's put up good numbers. What was he with San Antonio most recently, right? So he's a guy that even if he's not in the Jets lineup, he's going to factor in big time for the Moose.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was just, but like I said, I guess he and Nate Schmidt had gone to the same high school in Minnesota, and so he knew they didn't play together, but I think they were on the same team in the Beauty League, and he was ripping it up. So. That's another thing to factor in, but no, Drew, it's funny. I was thinking of the words from former Moose head coach Pascal Vincent talking about, I asked him something, conversation about players being ready, for the season. He always said, "This is where you learn who's a pro. This is where you're going to learn who's done the right things." we're going to be speaking to Logan Stanley. There's a guy who did the right things during his offseason and was able to make. You're talking about Jansen Harkins, Christian Vesalainen, David Gustafson, Dominic Caldonado. Who's going to be the guy who's going to be fighting for that spot? And I think each one of those guys has to be motivated knowing there's opportunity for them. If they come into camp in good shape, in the right way, having made improvements in the areas that they needed to make improvements. So it's easy for us to speculate, but we haven't been able to witness what their summer training regimens have been and how prepared they are for training camp. Once we, see a day 1, day 2, day 3, that's when you kind of get a sense, oh, hey, this guy's done something different. This guy's made some adjustments in his summer training regimen, or this guy's improved in the areas that he needed to improve from last year, and he's ready to kind of seize that opportunity. So as much as I'd love to speculate and say, I think it's going to be player X, and I'm not trying to punt on answering the question. I just think the biggest key is just to see what these guys look like in training camp on day 1 or day 2 and say, okay, well, this guy has clearly elevated his game to that next level. He's ready to seize that opportunity. So I think once we see that, that's when we'll really have an idea as to how it kind of separates itself. But it'll be a little tough, but it'll be interesting to watch.
I have to believe that, when the players sit back and they're, the season ends and they go back to their off-season homes, wherever that may be, and then they see all the moves that are being made, by Kevin Cheveldayoff, the acquisition of Nate Schmidt, the acquisition of Brendan Dillon, Andrew Copp and Paul Stastny coming back. I have to believe that, the vote of confidence that they appear to be getting from their general manager has to give them a boost entering the start of this coming season. So I think we'll have to ask Logan Stanley about that in about 10 minutes time, just to sort of see what the reaction is of the players when they see all the offseason moves that are being made, and how this team really seems to say, everyone, you talk about the windows closing, the windows opening, the window is half shut, the window's half open, whatever that nonsense is. It certainly appears that Kevin Cheveldayoff believes the Jets window is open, and he's even opened it further with the moves he's made this offseason, particularly those on the back end. Let's take a quick break. We're going to talk about the defense. Logan Stanley, Winnipeg Jets defenseman, is going to join us in about 10 minutes' time. Much more to come, much more Jets talk to come. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve.
Make sure they smash the like button, Drew.
Smash the like button, ring the bell, everything like that. Be sure to do that. You got to get back into regular season mode. If you,
I'm going to go get some more coffee. Drew. That's what I'm going to do.
You're going to get some more coffee?
Yep. I'm going to go upstairs, get a little bit more coffee, and come back and be ready to go.
Then that sounds very reasonable to me. We'll be right back. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
This year's Stanley Cup playoffs may not have fans in the arena, but you can still cheer for the Jets from the comfort of your own home. Thanks to the team at Lynn's Heating, Cooling, Sewer and Drain, offering discounted air conditioning or furnace tune-ups, you may want to cheer a little louder. For Winnipeg residents, Lynn's is offering next day discounts of 10% off AC or furnace tune-ups for each goal scored by the Jets. Cheering for the Jets just got even better thanks to your friends at Lynn's.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, we're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'll be okay. Just getting
it. All I can say is you can tell. How can you tell it's preseason?
Yeah,
that was an old commercial.
It's true. I played an old commercial, and I just said it's called the Illegal Curve Hockey Shoe. But aside from that, we're doing fine.
Drew, do you wear shoes in your house? Like, are you a shoe in the house guy?
I don't wear shoes, but I have slides that I wear in the house, like Adidas slides. Like I'm a hip, cool teenager.
Whoa.
Yeah,
I was like,
those
who is that guy?
I have no idea what that means, but okay.
Would you like me to lift my foot up so you can see them, or do you want to take my word for it?
No, we don't need to see your bunions, Drew.
Okay, that's good. I never used to be, and then Laura bought me a pair. Laura started wearing slides in the house, and then she bought me a pair.
Well, if Laura wears them, then they're legit. Yeah. That's fine. But if it was just you, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Now I can't go. It's slides in the summer, and then it's slippers in the winter. I can't go back to not wearing something on my feet. Yeah. It just feels too weird. So,
I definitely wear slippers in the winter, especially when I'm down here in the basement because it's freezing. But in the summer, I'm all about the bare feet.
Okay, well there you go. That's good to know that those you got to get those tootsies. Make sure they get nice and tanned in the summer. I'm sure that's what everybody was very concerned about.
I have the worst sandal tan ever right now.
Logan Stanley going to join us. Logan Stanley going to join us in a couple of minutes' time. Let's talk about the upgrades to the Jets defense. I mean, we know the names that the Jets brought in, Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon in particular. They don't lose anybody on the back end to the Kraken expansion draft. We know that ended up being Mason Appleton. So from my perspective, this defense certainly is the best looking defense that the Jets have had in the last number of years. How do you think that's going to sort of change the Jets' approach and the approach of Paul Maurice, knowing that you have really 6 bona fide NHL caliber defensemen night in, night out, barring injury, that they haven't been able to save for the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, think about it, right? Like a year ago, guys, we were talking about, is Sami Niku going to be able to crack this roster? And, all due respect to Sami Niku, like, I don't think he's going to play much for the Jets this year. I mean, I think there's a chance he might be traded just because, I mean, look at how many players are in front of him right now. Like, right? Like, Ville Heinola might not be in the Jets' top 6. There's a real strong chance that he starts the season with the Moose. But if you think about it, right, like, I think we would most likely say that right now and we're going to have Logan coming up, but your third pair could be Logan Stanley and Dylan DeMello. Right? Like that's a possibility. We don't know for certain, but that is a chance. So, I mean, Dylan DeMello was a top pairing defenseman for you last year. And there's always the chance, that you could have, someone like Nate Schmidt on the third pair, but I don't see it. So yes, the Jets top 6 defenseman and go down to the 7th, 8th, 9th defenseman is very good. So yes, Paul Maurice is going to have just an absolute, ball having, all these defensemen to choose from. And the D pairings, I imagine, will change from opening night and certainly in preseason. But there's no doubt that this Jets defense is absolutely stacked. And it reminds you back in 2018 when you had Buff, Myers, and Trouba on that right side, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, this is not last year's Winnipeg Jets defensive group. And it's clear. Like I just quickly referring back to that conversation I had with Nate Schmidt, he went through. I said to him, when you get added to a team like this in that manner, and he goes, I've gone through how I would play with each guy, And he just had a vision of how he would play with, Josh Morrissey and whether Brendan Dillon. And it was interesting to hear from a defenseman how he broke down pairings and how he could work with each different guy. Even Neil Pionk, he had a kind of an assessment of how they would work as a pairing. So I think that's kind of the beauty of this Jets team now, is you're really not going to be reliant on one. It's still going to be done by committee. I don't think you're going to have one pairing specifically that plays 30 minutes a night. I think it's going to be a real group effort still, but that's kind of the beauty of now the defensive team. Like these aren't like, I think defensive pairings in the NHL. None of these guys are collectively, like individually or as a group, saying that it's going to be they're the top. But collectively as a group, I think they have the will to do what they need to do, especially with a goalie like Connor Hellebuck in the fold.
We'll continue talking about the Winnipeg Jets defense, and we're going to do it with Jets defenseman Logan Stanley, who joins us on the program right now. Logan, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's our pleasure, Logan. Off season obviously continues. Training camp. We actually don't know when training camp starts. I assume you do. So, maybe about a week, 10 days away from now. But, we're still a little bit in the dark on that front.
Yeah, it's coming up quick for sure. I actually just got into Winnipeg yesterday. So I think a bunch of the guys are starting to roll into town and going to start skating together. So I'm looking forward to get back on the ice with everybody.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your summer before we look ahead to the upcoming season. I guess, you had such a great first year as an NHLer last year. You obviously were able to snipe a few goals that we all remember so well, some memorable goals, especially against that last game against the Montreal Canadiens. What was your off-season priority, I would say? There was a little bit of uncertainty with regard to the expansion draft and things of that nature. And then obviously you were protected, so that didn't end up becoming an issue. So what was your priority as you sort of, left the 2021 season and are getting ready for the new season?
Yeah, I think definitely when you start the off season, you want to go home and spend some time with your family and kind of unwind. So I got to do a little bit of that, which was nice. And then, you basically just get right back into training because the summer seems to be, shorter every year and you want to come back in good shape and ready to go. So I think last year was a good start for me, but, it was just a taste. And, there was a lot I wanted to work on in my game, still with my skating and foot speed and stuff like that. So, I was right back to work basically. And I feel pretty good right now. And I'm excited for this season. So, I think summer overall was good. Seems to be short, but, got some golf in and lots of training. So it was a good summer.
Golf and training, that's not a bad combination. You talk about improving your foot speed. For our audience, for ourselves, what are some of the drills you're working on in an attempt to improve that foot speed? I mean, we just sort of, we're regular guys. We can't really wrap our brains around the level of detail and the level of training detail that goes into being an NHL player. So when you talk about improving foot speed, what sort of activities, what sort of drills are you doing?
Yeah, I think for me, it starts in the gym, doing a lot of strength work, so you're more powerful and can move around better. And then you start incorporating sprints and footwork drills like the ladder and skipping and stuff like that. It's a lot of simple stuff too to when you get started. And then I think just, getting in good shape and good conditioning. So when you do go back on the ice, you feel good and you're ready to go. So, I got a good setup in Waterloo. Actually, Scheif works out at the same gym as me. So, we have a great trainer who understands what we both need to do to get better. So, I think we had a good summer and I feel good coming into camp.
Well, you're already a fast skater, Logan. So if you're going to be even faster this year, that's only going to be better. And, Drew mentioned, your incredible rookie season. And I got to go back. I'm sorry. It seems like it just happened yesterday. The 2 goals against Montreal in game 4. And obviously, that series was very disappointing for the team and the organization. But if you could just take us back, because I know that I wasn't alone fist pumping. I was out in Lactabani, Manitoba, watching that game. And can you just take us back to those 2 goals, especially that first one? You know, I had to, rewatch it on YouTube. It was so good. But obviously, that was an absolute howitzer. Carey Price, one of the best goalies of all time, had absolutely no chance on that one. But just take us back, because obviously those were 2 big goals that got you guys back into Game 4. Obviously didn't win the game, but those were 2 huge goals for you.
Yeah, I think, in the moment, everything kind of goes so fast, and you're just focused on trying to help the team win. So it doesn't really sink in until maybe a couple weeks later when, my dad was like, that was pretty cool. I was like, yeah, I guess it kind of was, so I didn't think about it too much, because obviously we ended up losing that game and the series. So that kind of stung more than anything, which kind of, it takes away from scoring a couple goals. At the end of the day, it's about winning. So it was definitely a cool moment, especially, you said, Carey Price, one of the best goalies in the world. And looking back at it, it was pretty cool. Something that I'll remember for sure.
Logan, the Jets made a lot of moves on the back end this summer. So you, as a player, what are your thoughts when you see what they, trading for a guy like Nate Schmidt, acquiring Brendan Dillon? What were your thoughts as a pretty big member of that back end?
I think the first thing you're just excited. You think, you get 2 really good players that can come in and improve your team right away. So, with Deli being, a big, tough guy who can skate and move the puck. And then, obviously Nate is skilled and can work your power play and kind of do everything. So both those guys are going to, help our team and help our blue line for sure. So I think you're just excited, and you look at our team and starting with Helly all the way up to our forward group, we believe we have a good team in here, and we're excited for the season.
Logan Stanley is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. Logan, going back to the expansion draft, when you were protected by the Winnipeg Jets so that the Seattle Kraken weren't able to select you, how did you find out that you were going to be protected? Does Kevin Cheveldayoff give you a call? Does he call your agent? And what did it mean to you to get that additional vote of confidence from the organization that has drafted and developed you over these number of years, that they continue to see you growing as a player and wanted to keep you in the fold for a number of years?
Yeah, I was actually hanging out with my family. We were up at their cottage, and I got a call from my agent, and he said that Chevy had called and said I was protected. And I think, I was just relieved. I didn't want to go anywhere. I want to play for the Jets. Like you said, the team that drafted me and has put a lot of time and work into developing me. So there's nowhere else I'd rather be right now in my career than in Winnipeg. So I was relieved and definitely excited that they did do that, knowing that I would be back in Winnipeg. So, it was pretty cool to be able to tell my parents and my brother and girlfriend that I was staying. So, it was a lot of fun.
And then as an addendum to that question, you also were an RFA at season's end. You ended up signing that 2-year contract with the Jets, a 2-year extension. How did that sort of situation play out? How did that negotiation happen between the Jets organization and presumably your agent? And then, it seemed like it got done relatively quickly. And was that sort of just, a comfortable number, a comfortable fit for both sides that allowed this to come to fruition?
Yeah, you know what, that's what my agent's for. He's dealing with that stuff, and I just wanted to be a Winnipeg Jet. I just wanted to sign a new deal, and I was lucky enough that we worked out I think a fair deal for both sides, and it was pretty easy. And when Chevy called me after, I just told him I was so excited and couldn't wait to get back for camp. So I'm really happy that it got done quickly, and I'm pumped to be back.
Logan, how much different is your approach and just everything that's going on in the world compared to last year? Like you mentioned, you've been in Waterloo, you're back in Winnipeg, but working with Mark Scheifele. But just considering that, there were no fans in the building, everything was, relatively new, shortened season, everything like that. And obviously, you hadn't played a full year in the NHL. So, what's it like for you personally, having that successful first year under your belt and just knowing that, the world is slowly getting back to normal?
Well, yeah, I think it's great that the world is slowly getting back to normal. I think it's great for, small businesses and people who've suffered through this time. It's been tough on a lot of people. So that's definitely a plus. And I think last year, starting, I got to experience a whole bunch of new things, playing my first year in the NHL. And now this year is going to be a whole another set of experiences, going to different rinks and playing in front of fans. So, I can't wait to play that first game in Winnipeg and hear the cheers again. So it's going to be exciting. And talking to the guys, I think everyone's pumped to get the fans back in the building.
Logan Stanley is our guest. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, Logan, you and you were close with him was Pascal Vincent, who's departed for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So maybe some thoughts on what Pascal Vincent meant to you?
Yeah, I think Pazzi was very important in my career. We had a great relationship. When I played for him, he was a great coach. I loved playing for him. But I think he just understood the type of player that I was and the type of person that I was. So he knew how to get the best out of me. And, we had some good meetings. My second year with the Moose, it wasn't, exactly how I was expecting it to go. And he kind of said, everybody's different. You're going to take longer than some guys and you just need to stick with it because you're a good hockey player. And, I remember that conversation in his office and he just is a really down-to-earth guy that expects a lot out of his players. And I think for me, that was great to play for a guy like him.
You talk about that and sort of the development curve, and the development curve is obviously different for all players. But as a first round pick, I'd say there's probably more pressure on you because everyone wants immediate gratification. They immediately want you to step in the lineup and be an immediate impact player. Mentally, how difficult was that for you, knowing that you had to sort of let your game develop on its own course when you might have seen some other members of your own draft class already reach the NHL, faster than you ended up doing so?
Yeah, I think, you definitely notice when, guys that are around you in the draft start making it and playing games, but I knew who I was and I knew my path was going to be different than everybody else's. So, I was always confident myself, knowing that I was going to play in the NHL at one point. I just had to keep working and keep improving because, some guys just aren't ready right when they're drafted or even after their first year. And that was my case. So I knew that. And the Jets do a great job at developing here. Their staff is unbelievable. So, I think I knew just if I keep working hard and keep trying to get better and grow my game, that eventually was going to happen.
Logan, we were talking about it right before you came on, right? Like, obviously, the acquisitions of Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, big acquisitions, and we were talking about the possible D pairings and everything like that. We wanted to ask you, like, have you talked to Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt at all? Have you talked to those guys? Like, did you know them, before they were acquired by the Jets organization? Like, do you guys, talk at all about, whether that's with a guy like, Neil Pionk or whether that's a guy like, Dylan DeMello? Do you guys talk about, whether you're going to play, or is it just, you focus on your own game and your preparation for training camp? And then obviously, that's going to work itself out when it comes to, the preseason and regular season.
Yeah, I think right now everyone's focused on getting better themselves. And that's going to all figure itself out during the preseason and into the start of the regular season, which guys have chemistry and what fits right. So, right now I'm just focused on trying to get better before camp starts and, trying to have a good solid camp. And then, we have a lot of good defensemen here. So, I believe that anyone can play with everybody on our D-core. And I think that's also something that makes us, pretty good D-core.
Absolutely.
Well, Logan, one of the things I remember we talked, I don't remember if it was after a game or after, I think it was after a practice when you were with the Moose, and we were talking about, having faith in the process and having an understanding of where you're going. And that you said during the course of this interview that you felt you were going to be an NHL, or you were going to play games in the NHL. But is that something you think people on the outside miss? They think, we live in this instant gratification society where guys have to make the NHL in their next year, especially with defensemen, it takes a little longer. But, I like I said, I remember talking to you, and you always had this vision. You knew where things were going to go. And like you said, is that something the organization has done a very good job of in terms of laying it out for you? Like, you may not play next year, but you will play for this team.
Yeah, I think when the Jets drafted me, they knew that, I was going to take a little bit longer than other people that they've drafted before. And I knew that too, because I grew so fast and was, so big when I was so young. So took me a little bit longer to, catch up to everyone and that. But I think it's also, you have to have a little bit of self-confidence in yourself, and, just that feeling of knowing that you are a good hockey player and you're going to make it. It just might take you a little bit more time. So I think I always had the self-confidence, and I think that was a big key in helping me last year.
Logan Stanley is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're talking to the Winnipeg Jets defenseman. Logan, you look at the Jets defense now, and it's obviously a reshaped defense with the acquisition of Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. The physicality that you brought last year, I mean, the rest of the defense, I'm going to say not undersized, but I think you were the most physical of the Winnipeg Jets defensemen. How much pride do you put in sort of that physical part of the game and making things difficult for opponents as they try and get near Connor Hellebuck, knowing that there's a large human being they're going to have to go through to get near the goaltender and get into the goaltender's face? I mean, that is, you can't teach size, which is an old adage, of course, but you have that in spades, and now you have a guy like Brendan Dillon who also brings that to the table. How important do you think that's going to be for the Jets next season?
Yeah, for sure, it's important. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I am where I am, because that's my job to play that way, and I think that's the same with Deli. He's a hard-nosed player, and not afraid to get his hands dirty. So I think that's great for our team, and we need to play that way in front of Helly and make sure nobody's around him so he can stop the puck.
Just to get away from the hard-hitting illegal curve questions here, Logan, you mentioned, earlier that you got into some golf. What else? I agree with you, and maybe it's because, I'm getting older and older. I'm almost 40, and it seems like the summer year after year, it gets shorter and shorter. But were you able to, get up to anything, exciting that you can share with, our viewers and people who will be listening on the podcast aside from golf? Like anything that you can share that you're able to do in Ontario this summer?
Yeah, honestly, I had a pretty low-key summer. I didn't get up to much. I spent lots of time with family and some friends, and fortunate enough that my parents have a boat and a cottage on some water, so spent a lot of time up there on the weekends, just kind of relaxing and spending time with them. It's a long season, and obviously we couldn't see our families much last year, so it was great to be able to spend time with my parents and my younger brother. So I think that's the majority of what I did. Through the week you're training and skating, and so it's nice to get away on a Saturday or Sunday and just go relax on the water.
Logan, one of the things we often talk about is having fun. You're playing hockey, and it's, obviously it's a serious business, but at the same time, you get to play a game and for a profession, and that's a fun thing as well. When you have a guy like Nate Schmidt, who I did a one-on-one with him a few weeks ago. It's like full on energy. He's like 100 the whole time you're talking to him. So what can a guy like that do for a room that, if you don't have it, the absence of that, you kind of notice it. When you have a guy like that who brings that level of energy, that level of fun to a team, what can that do for you guys as a group?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it right there. It brings so much energy to our group every day, when you have guys like that. So it makes coming to the rink fun, and you're going to laugh and enjoy yourself. And then, when it's time to work and do your job, you go out and do that. But, guys like that who keep things light and fun and entertaining, you need that in your room to be able to click and mesh well on the ice. So I think he'll be a great addition to our room, and I'm excited to meet him.
Last question for you, Logan, then we'll let you get started on your day. Obviously COVID is still a factor, but for those players who are vaccinated, it's going to be a much more normal year. You'll be able to go out, you'll be able to go to restaurants, you'll be able to spend time with your teammates. Sort of a two-part question, just how difficult was last year? I mean, we know it was difficult for basically everybody, but for an athlete like yourself who's used to that, level of camaraderie and, when you're out on the road, you go for dinner with, your teammates, the inability to do things like that, how much of a factor, how much did that sort of weigh on players throughout the course of last year? And then a follow-up for this coming season, has vaccinations been a topic among the teammates? I've read that, most NHLers are vaccinated. So is that sort of something that is, permeating throughout the dressing room and shouldn't be a factor for this coming year?
Yeah, I think last year, everybody, missed hanging out with each other, on off days or going for dinners on the road. That's a big part of being a team and gelling together. So I think that'll be nice this year to be able to do some stuff like that and grow as a team. And with the vaccinations, I think most guys in the league do have it. I'm not sure if anyone on our team doesn't or not. I guess we'll find that out soon, but I'm not sure the exact rules of what's all going to go on, but I know I have my vaccine, so we'll see how it plays out this year.
It'll be a subplot to the season, but fortunately, it shouldn't be the main event to the season. It'll be back to being a normal 82-game season where you don't play the same team each and every night like it seemed we were doing for a while last year. I'm sure you're looking forward to getting back to traveling into some other destinations and seeing some new opponents rather than the 48th game against the Ottawa Senators or something along those lines. Logan, thank you so much for doing this. We'll see you at training camp in a week or 10 days time, whenever the official start date is, and best of luck for the upcoming 2021-2022 season.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fun.
Take care, Logan. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
There he goes, Logan Stanley, Winnipeg Jets defenseman, joining us on the program. Let's take another commercial break. When we come back, we'll recap that interview. We'll talk more about the Jets defense, the Jets forward, the Jets coaching staff, all Winnipeg Jets talk. Chris Johnston going to join us in about 15 minutes time. Much more to come. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Never let it be said I'm not a quick learner. I managed to get rid of the old ad and added in the right ad. So, here we are back into mid-season form after an early hiccup. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media outlets. Big thanks to Logan Stanley for joining us. Talk about his offseason, talk about the upcoming season. If he continues to develop, and obviously that's an if. He's managed to make great strides since, he was a regular with the Manitoba Moose. Nobody really necessarily expected him to have the impact he had last year, albeit in some sheltered minutes. But if he continues to make strides, that's again more found money for the Winnipeg Jets, after he was a guy that a lot of people had some questions about if he was going to develop and if he was going to stand up to the pedigree that he had as a former first-round selection.
And why shouldn't you think he's going to develop, right, guys? Like, it's funny because Logan Stanley was talking about when he was younger. He's 23 years old. Like, he still is young. And, he's only in his second full NHL season, right? So he is going to get better. And if you watched, what he did in game 4 in that second period, scoring those 2 goals, I mean, I think he, for those who didn't watch him, like Dave and me and others in the American Hockey League or even in the OHL, like, I think I'd have to look it up, but I think he had something like 15 or 16 goals one year in the OHL. So like he has offensive ability as well, right? Like, yes, he's 6'7" and, he's a physical defenseman, but he's a guy that can jump up into the play and score goals, right? Like I even said, like maybe Stanley, at one point might get some second power play time, right? Like it's going to be tough on this Jets team. But this is a guy who I think, can jump up and play, into your top 4, maybe not this year, but in the future. So let's all remember that he's 23 years old. So, big thanks to Logan for joining us. And I do think the sky's the limit for him. And, he happens to be a little bit closer to the sky than Drew and I.
Very true, Mr. Ginsburg. Dave, we talked about Logan Stanley and we talked about, Ville Heinola. Like right now, it just doesn't necessarily seem like there's a spot for Heinola. If there's a spot for him to take, is it Logan Stanley's at training camp, or is Logan Stanley a shoe-in relatively for, a left side defenseman role for this Jets team this season?
No, I don't think so. I think there will be a battle I don't think anybody comes in, especially like as you just said, who's young in his career with the expectation that they have a spot earned. I think, and we saw his commitment to what he was able to do in the offseason, and no one expected it. I mean, to Ezzy's point, I watched every game he played for the Moose, and while I would always say to people when asked, I thought he would play in the NHL, I didn't expect him to be, I thought I killed all the flies in here, but they're still attacking me. But no, again, he was able to work hard in the offseason and take a jump that I didn't expect. Pascal Vincent, I remember when we would be chatting on doing interviews, he said, look at, that's all on the player. He did the things that he needed to do in the offseason. So I would expect Logan Stanley has prepared himself. I mean, in answer to your question, Drew, he said, I didn't really get out to do much other than spend time. It was a very low key summer. Well, that translates to, I worked my ass off in the summer to continue to earn that spot. So I would expect that he did exactly that and will be ready and willing to battle for a spot on this Jets top 6. And I think Ville Heinola probably did the same. Of course, I haven't spoken to him. We haven't had an opportunity to talk to him since, the last season ended. But my guess is, he's another young guy. But to your point, I would expect him to be down with the Moose, most likely. And it's the same as the 13th forward question you asked me earlier. I don't say anything. I can't make predictions until I really see what these guys how they come into training camp. If they come into training camp in the right way, then yeah, it could be a huge battle between Logan Stanley and Ville Heinola, almost a David versus Goliath sort of thing. And if not, then, maybe one of them earns it outright, and the other is well, not Logan Stanley, but I would imagine like if it's Ville Heinola, he's down with the Moose and he's playing top pairing minutes with, alongside a Johnny Kovacevic. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. So I don't lose sleep. I don't lose my mind over prospects continuing to develop. The only time I ever lose my mind is if the prospects are sitting in the press box, which they don't do anymore. But in theory, if they did, then that would be the only thing that would be a waste for guys like that, because it's a waste of their development time. when they could be earning those minutes and that valuable opportunity with the Manitoba Moose.
There was a question earlier in the chat. I'm not sure who posed it, but about the existence of a taxi squad this year, and there's no expectation that there's going to be a taxi squad like we saw last year. So that won't be a factor about having players sitting and not really playing, or especially young players who are doing that on a regular basis. You're either going to be playing at the NHL level, or you should be playing at the AHL level, and the guys who are going to be in the press box are your veteran guys. A guy like, if you look at the Jets, the Jets have 8 defensemen signed to NHL contracts. A guy like Nate Beaulieu, I think most people would have penciled in for as the 7th defenseman, or whatever happens with a guy like Sami Niku throughout the course of training camp, if he's a member of the Winnipeg Jets, if they end up shipping him somewhere in exchange for a draft pick or something along those lines. There is no expectation that there will be a taxi squad. But, I asked Logan about it, and I think this is a factor for this Jets team. In years past, they were undersized on the back end. Now, I'm not saying that, size is the be all and the end all, and there certainly isn't a place for a guy who's big but wears, cement shoes instead of skates anymore in the NHL. But when you add in Logan Stanley and you add in Brendan Dillon, those guys are large human beings, and anybody who's going to try and get close into the quote unquote dirty areas are going to try and make, Connor Hellebuck's life more miserable, are going to face some significant adversity in Stanley and in Dillon, whereas last year they may not have necessarily felt that same adversity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we should mention, though, even though a guy like Neil Pionk is, 5'11", 6 feet, he can throw his weight around. I think that's one of the things that surprised Jets fans and most observers the most about Pionk's game, right? Like, we knew he had that offensive ability, right, in his year with the Rangers and going back to the Minnesota Duluth. But Pionk we've seen that quite a bit over the years with Pionk since he came over. Like, this is a guy that can play that physical game. But you're right, Brendan Dillon at 6'4", 210 plus pounds, like, he's a guy that can really throw his weight around. But just look at Tampa Bay's defense, guys. Like, Tampa Bay is still the gold standard right now. Nate Schmidt said it in his interview, his chat with Dave a couple of weeks back. Like, everybody is gunning for that Stanley Cup. At least the Jets are, and teams that have high expectations are. I don't know if the Arizona Coyotes are aiming for the Stanley Cup. No offense to the Coyotes, but they're making a trade every 3 days. So
maybe the ECHL Kelly Cup, something like that.
Yeah. Maybe they're going to be competing with the Danbury Trashers. I don't know, but
did you watch that documentary?
It was unforgettable. It's one of the best sports documentaries. It's unbelievable, Drew. You should definitely watch it.
It's on Netflix, right?
Absolutely. Former Devil Mike Rupp plays a key role in that documentary. You'll have to watch it to find out. But obviously, 2003 Stanley Cup winning goal for those who forgot. But physicality is a big part of the game. The reason why I mentioned Tampa boys is because, look at some of the bodies they had. Like, Victor Hedman obviously is one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the world. He's 6'6". Look at David Savard on your third pair at 6'2", 6'3". Ryan McDonough, Man Mountain, right? Like, these are big boys.
They brought back Zach Bogosian.
Well, Zach Bogosian, Eric Chernak. Like, these are all big defensemen. So I'm not saying, that small 5'11", 6 foot defenseman can't have a huge role in the NHL and be top defenseman. Like, a guy like Josh Morris and Neil Pionk, perfect examples of that. Ville Heinola. But I think you do have to have, your 6'3", 6'4", in the case of Logan Stanley, 6'7" defenseman. Physicality is still part of the game in a different way than it was, 7 to 10 years ago. But especially when you get into the playoffs, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a man's league, guys. Like, this isn't a 19-year-old's league. This is a, 27 to 30-year-old league when you consider kind of the average age of NHL players, right? So I think absolutely bringing in Dillon definitely kind of addresses the lack of size and physicality on the back end.
Dave?
What?
Dave? I was waiting for you to follow up to what Ezzy said there.
Yeah, you could have said something too, Drew.
Well, I mean,
I did. I said Dave.
Yeah, well, you usually you kind of reset there, Drew. I didn't want to step on your toes. I figured you kind of reset the question there.
I could.
As I blank.
So the question had to do with physicality on the Jets back end and how that's going to change things this year as opposed to the last couple years, especially when, the guy who was the most physical, for the Jets obviously was Dustin Byfuglien. Tyler Myers wasn't physical on a regular basis, but he was certainly big. He didn't play with an edge to his game. Now that you're adding that edge back into the Winnipeg Jets defense and adding that edge back onto the the area in front of Connor Hellebuyck, how big of a factor do you think that'll be? Do you think that'll make Hellebuck's life even easier than just an improved defense in front of him will do?
Folks will notice it didn't take much to get Drew to do a reset. He enjoyed that opportunity for some mic time. So I think Drew, it's going to be a big factor. I don't think there's any question, and I'm not using big as a pun. I think that, like you said, a guy like as you said, Neil Pionk isn't a big guy, but he plays big. You've got Brendan Dillon. Nate Schmidt, when I was talking to him, spoke about, the type of player Brendan Dillon is. And so I think, him, although my favorite part about Brendan Dillon when he was doing interviews was how he constantly referenced himself in the third person. Brendan Dillon hockey this, Brendan Dillon that. So I think folks are going to enjoy the physicality that this team is going to be able to exploit.
Well, I'm sure they will. Let's talk more about things around the NHL. Our good friend Chris Johnston joins the show. I was going to say from Sportsnet, but no longer the case. To the Toronto Star, Chris Johnston joins us on the program to talk about the NHL as it awakens from its summer slumber. I guess, CJ, first and foremost, congratulations. And, exciting move for you to head back to the Toronto Star. And you wrote about it quite eloquently in your debut column, I guess, for the paper.
Yeah, thanks. It's certainly not how I expected my summer to end up, the way things went. But, they've put a really nice opportunity in front of me, and they've got a real impressive plan to continue to be a news organization that lives up to the legacy they built moving forward in the future here. And, I'll still be appearing somewhere on your television set, just working through those types of things too. So it's going to be an exciting season for me. I think change can be positive for everyone. Probably the way Nate Schmidt's feeling coming to Winnipeg, or any player that switched teams over the summer. I think sometimes a fresh start is a good place to be.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, I guess, I think it's almost a rebirth for the entire NHL this coming year. Last year, COVID was the umbrella that was hanging over everything. Everything was viewed through that lens. Now it seems like there's going to be a fair degree of normalcy, and that's exciting, I think, for everyone. Do you get the sense that as training camps will get underway in the next week or 10 days or so, that everyone is going to sort of feel that they've been hooked up to that rejuvenation machine after what was the trials and tribulations of a difficult 2021 season?
Well, that's certainly the hope. I don't think any of us can say with certainty how this is all going to play out, whether, if the fourth wave or, if there will be more interruptions to the schedule or the teams having outbreaks. But, let's hope that's mostly behind us. I do know from speaking to people around the league that, as we get to the start of the regular season, there's a thought that really close to 100% of NHL players will be vaccinated. I know some have been a little later, but after seeing, the way the rules have been rolled out, there's kind of a two-tiered system right now. If you're vaccinated, you can have a little bit more normalcy on the road as an NHL player. If you're unvaccinated, it's going to be a very difficult experience. And so, I think that the way we all probably feel is individually coming through the pandemic, you want it to be over. You want something like normal. It's something I think we're probably feeling as a society. And so I think sports can reflect that. And, I know in some of the Canadian markets, there's a hope they'll have full buildings. They're very close to full buildings, which is not something we saw in Canada, of course, last season. And certainly down in the US, I think there'll be, a lot more full arenas and a bit more excitement around the games, I think, that we've all been missing.
Chris, you wrote about this for the Toronto Star. I believe it was either yesterday or a couple of days ago. And by the way, you joining the Toronto Star made me get the subscription. So
awesome.
For everyone out there, get your subscription to the Toronto Star to read Chris's work and obviously all the other great work. And, specifically the article I'm talking about is the Beijing Olympics 2022, the announcement about a week and a half ago that the NHL will be participating. But you mentioned in the article that, nothing is, certain, especially with, the uncertainty with COVID-19. But the question I wanted to ask you, like I was thinking about this, last night, and the question I wanted to ask you was specifically about those young players. You're talking about Connor McDavid, you're talking about Victor Hedman, guys that have never represented their countries in the Olympics. It sounded like those younger players were the driving force. Not to say that some of the older players didn't want to participate in the Olympics, because it seems like the overwhelming majority of players wanted to go. But did it seem like the McDavids and the Hedmans and the Austin Matthews, like those were the guys that were saying like, no, we need to go in 22 and participate in Beijing?
Yeah, I'd say unequivocally, if it wasn't for the desire of those players to go, this wouldn't be happening. I mean, we all know the NHL stance on this. They didn't go to Pyeongchang in 2018. They even before that were raising some of the issues the owners have with this. And I think even in this case, the NHL Players Association looked at, some of the sacrifices players are going to have to make in order to have this tournament go on. And maybe wouldn't necessarily be saying this is the deal you should be taking, but ultimately it was the player's voice that carried the day. And I'll give you an example of that. At this point in time, and no one knows with certainty, but it's very much expected the players won't be able to bring any of their family and friends as spectators or guests for this tournament. They're obviously going to travel to Asia in the middle of the season. They're likely going to be subjected to very tight bubbles. I mean, no sightseeing, no going out to restaurants, back to sort of what we've lived through in the NHL the last 2 years. They might even have to wear GPS devices. There's some talk about that in terms of just tracking their movements and who comes into contact with whom. And on top of that, there's no COVID insurance on their contracts. And so if a player were to contract COVID-19 while in Beijing for the Olympics, theoretically his team could say, we're not paying you while you recover from that. And so you combine all that together. I mean, what are the players getting out of this? Just really the obvious, the ability to compete for their countries, the chances to try to win a gold medal, to participate on this stage. And despite some of those things that you might term as inconveniences or downright, something you wouldn't really want to put yourself through, the players overwhelmingly were in favor of this. And so, I think that's the key takeaway for me. I mean, it makes sense. Look, I'm older than all these guys, but I remember watching 2002 Salt Lake City gold medal game, Canada and the U.S. at my parents' house with like 30 of our closest friends. These guys were probably too young for that, but they grew up. We're 2010. That's a big moment in Austin Matthews' life or Connor McDavid's life. These players have sort of wanted to emulate their heroes, and I think that this is something that they've really pushed forward here. We haven't seen best on best since the 2016 World Cup. Basically, most of the best players in the NHL have turned over since then. We've seen a real push here with a young wave of star players. And so, I hope for their sake this can still go off. As I mentioned in that article I wrote at the Star, the league and the Players Association actually has until January 10th to opt out of the games with no penalty. The games are due to start on February 9th. So essentially right up until a month before, they can pull the plug if the COVID situation in the NHL gets so bad, if there are other circumstances that make them do so. And so, while they've announced that they're going to do this, while the players certainly want it, and I believe the owners intend to honor their agreement here, we still got a few months to navigate before we know for sure whether this will be a best on best Olympics.
Chris Johnston of the Toronto Star is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the Olympics, talking about the NHL as the 2021-2022 season begins to slowly resume and get underway, and training camp rapidly approaching for the entire league.
Chris, we won't have the benefit of an all-Canadian division anymore, but if you had to pinpoint one of the Canadian teams that has made the biggest improvements, has probably the best chance to challenge for the Stanley Cup, who is on that list for you?
Oh. Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't think any team's offseason in Canada specifically has compelled me to think that they're more likely to win. I mean, I could see a team like Edmonton or Toronto maybe getting it together and doing it, but obviously those teams have not had any real tangible success in the playoffs with the cores that have been in place now for a few seasons. I do like what the Jets have done, though. I mean, it's pretty clear where the deficiencies were last year. It was no surprise, I suppose, that the blue line was a weakness, and I like the way that they went about solving some of those issues or finding strength there without having to sacrifice too much elsewhere in the lineup. But I haven't looked at what the betting lines would be. My assumption is entering the season, we're probably not going to see a Canadian Stanley Cup champion. I think, what Montreal did, they got on a really hot run. I certainly don't want to take anything away from them, but they've also, changed up the core of their team quite dramatically since then. And so I don't really see them in that position. Vancouver, took a step back. I think Calgary's kind of wandering around the woods a little bit. I'm not sure, what's going on there. And so really Toronto, Edmonton, and Winnipeg for me, and Ottawa obviously isn't at that stage yet either. So Toronto, Edmonton, and Winnipeg are the three possibilities, if I'd say it. And I think all of them are semi-long shots-ish. But, the beauty of this, of course, is I don't know how it's going to go. 82 games, returning to the old format. Certainly some of the powerhouse teams. If we look at the last decade, right, you're looking at Boston, you're looking at Pittsburgh, Washington. Those were kind of perennial teams. They're all just aging out of their phases where they're true contenders. I think Vegas and Colorado will still be very prominent in that conversation in the Western Conference for teams that can compete. But, I guess there's room here, I guess, for someone to break through. And, I almost feel like it has to come a little bit internally, not through one off season of changes. And so, maybe one of these core groups in the three Canadian cities I mentioned that have been together will find a way to reach another level and be part of that Stanley Cup conversation.
Chris, we saw an offer sheet, which is, relatively unprecedented, doesn't happen every day. And we saw the team elect to not match the offer sheet, which is that the first one since Dustin Penner? I might be missing one in between, but it's been a long, long time. So from your perspective, was this a advisable move by the Carolina Hurricanes, or was this an emotional move based on spite by the Carolina Hurricanes? Or both, I guess, for that matter.
I think it can be both. I don't know if it's pure spite, but certainly the element of revenge. The Hurricanes haven't hidden from that. Tom Dundon did an interview on radio in Toronto, and he acknowledged that, had this not happened to them with Sebastian Aho, it probably wouldn't be something they were pursuing this offseason. I don't mind the move, though, from their perspective. You're getting a 21-year-old center who's played 3 years in the league, obviously hasn't reached the potential that saw him become a third overall pick by Montreal, but you're getting a pretty attractive asset, and they can afford that cap hit for 1 year. There's some thought that they've maybe contemplated an extension at some point with Jesperi Kotkaniemi that will be a little cheaper than what this one season is going to be and what it took to prime for Montreal. You're giving up a first and a third round pick, but Carolina plans to be in the conversation for the Stanley Cup themselves. And so if those end up being later in the first and third rounds, I don't think the cost here is that high for a player that, conceivably is entering probably the best 5 years of whatever his NHL career is going to look like. It's, starts right now, through till about the time he's 27. So, I don't mind the move. I think it was smart. They targeted a team with cap issues, and, they've at least acquired an asset that I think is going to have some value. Where there's risk is Kotkaniemi hasn't lived up to his promise yet. And so if he never gets there, I guess this maybe doesn't look that great from the Carolina end of things, although, look at what gets traded at the trade deadline every year, and you're getting something generally in that case far less appealing, and certainly something that doesn't have the long-term potential that Kotkaniemi has. So I like this. I think this is illustrative of how offer sheets, can and should be used moving forward. It's not usually going to be the superstars, in my opinion, that you get. Like if someone went out and offer sheeted Elias Pettersson right now in Vancouver, who is still an unsigned restricted free agent, I just think the Canucks would match it at almost any contract level. But Carolina found the right player and found the right price point where Montreal just ultimately couldn't do it. And, I think that's the way forward. Although I will say, I made some calls this week because I was just curious, around the league to people that weren't directly involved in the situation and said, do you think this makes offer sheets more likely or less likely? And a lot of the sentiment I got from around the NHL is that this actually makes it less likely because they feel that Montreal kind of initiated this with the Aho one, and that might scare off teams even trying moving forward. But, I hope this becomes something we see used. Look, in a flat cap environment, I think it's more likely because there's going to be more teams that are squeezed each off season. And, there'll probably be sort of second tier type of players out there that can be had this way. And, I think it's compelling. And now we have a Hurricanes-Canadiens rivalry. Who would have thought that was possible?
Love it. And Chris, we got to ask you about Jack Eichel, right? Because Elliot Friedman, of course, reported a couple of days ago that Jack Eichel's new representatives had met with the Sabres. Are we any closer to Jack Eichel being traded? Like, do you see him being traded before the regular season starts, or is it going to be, during the regular season, either, early on or closer to the trade deadline? It seems like it's been very quiet in terms of like the Eichel trade rumors. When you consider he's the second overall pick from 2015, I mean, this is arguably a top 10 forward in the NHL. Like where are we at right now with the whole Eichel trade situation?
I have to believe they're going to find a way. Jack Eichel changing his agents to CAA, to Pat Brisson and JP Barry, known sort of deal makers. If I'm not mistaken, and I should fact check this, but I think Roberto Luongo did the same in Vancouver. I think he switched to Pat Brisson to sort of help things behind the scenes. I mean, obviously you're talking two of the most powerful agents in hockey with deep connections. I think they're known deal makers. They're not necessarily the type of agents that come out and negotiate in public or take hardline stances. I think that they're about finding deals. And so, perhaps, adding them to this dynamic, and I'm not being critical of Jack Eichel's previous agents, but maybe just changing a few of the key people at the table might, lead to a good outcome here, because, there's a couple, there's like 3 or 4 major issues at play. First of all, Jack Eichel has a serious neck issue, and there's not agreement between him and the Sabres about how that should be treated or dealt with. He's got a $10 million cap hit, and so as good as he is, that does limit or complicate, the ability of any team to just go out and trade for him. And for Buffalo, he's such a valuable asset that they just can't give him away for free or for pennies on the dollar. And so, you have a first-year GM in Kevin Adams, a relatively inexperienced GM who's under immense pressure, in my opinion, to make a great trade. And so, all of those things being present, I think, complicate this deal. Once it got through the entry draft, I think that complicated it. Remember the Seth Jones trade, for example, from Columbus to Chicago included a pick on the afternoon of the first round of the draft in late July that, Chicago got to make, Columbus got to make right away. And I think that there's some appeal to that. And so, I would expect any Jack Eichel trade will include at least one first round pick. It would have been nice for Buffalo if it was on July 28th or 23rd or whenever the first round of the draft was, and they could have been making it that night. And so, despite all those things, though, I have to believe it's best for everyone involved. If there's some ending here, I don't see this hanging over the Sabres through training camp being a positive for the team. And so we'll see if they can get something done. But the $10 million cap hit worries me the most, that and the fact that a team will have to give up significant assets while knowing they're probably not going to be able to put Jack Eichel in their lineup for a couple months because of his health issues.
Along those lines, Chris Johnston's our guest of the Toronto Star here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Is there any precedent for this kind of situation where a player who ostensibly could be a superstar, based on his pedigree and based on his previous track record of, not necessarily the team having success, but he's had individual success, where he needs a serious surgery or a serious medical condition to be resolved and wanting a trade at the same time? It really seems like we're in uncharted waters here. So what a successful trade looks like from Kevin Adams' perspective, I think, is really unknown, because no one's ever had to try and balance all these different issues at one time.
Right. I mean, the best comparable I can think of, and it's not perfect, is Eric Lindros back in the day, when he had concussion issues and he and the Flyers had some difference of opinion on how his recovery should go. But he was a true bona fide superstar. I believe he'd won a Hart Trophy by that point. I mean, not that Jack Eichel's necessarily all that far off that with his accomplishments through a few seasons of his career. But you're right. In a cap world, I can't think of something quite like this. And you're still talking about a relatively young player. Like if, and it is an if, I mean, no one has certainty, but if Jack Eichel is as good as he's been in the past or can find a way to get better, I mean, you're still buying his best years if you were to bring him in right now. But no one knows that. And, some people, and I'm certainly deferring to experts here, this is not my opinion, but there's some risk, believed or perceived risk to this surgical procedure he wants, because it's not something that's been done in the past on hockey players. It's, relatively new procedure on his neck. And so, it is a difficult spot. Buffalo, they want to get 4 assets basically. And those are tangible assets. That's not just like guys that play on the fourth line. So they're asking for a lot. They're asking for top prospects. I think they take young players that are impactful, and then obviously, first round picks or something like that to sweeten the pot. I mean, it's a big ask, but I think that this is a player that it's worth giving that up for if you have some certainty or some comfort with his medical situation. I think that's what teams have had to try to work through here behind the scenes while things have been pretty quiet.
Chris, here in Winnipeg, I know Paul Maurice loved the baseball-style schedule, and I think the Jets would have been very happy to see something like that return. Are you somewhat surprised, because it seemed like it was successful? I know maybe on a 3-4 night, it wouldn't be the same thing, obviously, because fans get a little weary of seeing the same team. But are you surprised they didn't do a few more like double headers in the schedule upcoming?
Yeah, a little surprised. I think what they found is it was harder going back to a more balanced schedule. Teams were playing each other less, especially those that aren't in the same division over the course of this season. And then on top of that, there is some worry about the fans. And if this season is about anything in the NHL, it's obviously getting business back to its best possible place. And one way you do that is by satisfying your paying customers as much as you can. And so I think that there was concern, say, let's talk about an East and West. Let's say it's the Leafs coming to Winnipeg and where they're only going to play one time this year. Actually, that's not a good one. Well, how about Connor McDavid? Maybe you schedule 2 games in November back-to-back, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and I don't have the schedule in front of me. Hopefully that doesn't actually exist. I think one of the concerns was that what happens if Connor's injured that week? And then the fans in Winnipeg go an entire season where they don't get to see him in their building. And so I do know that was kind of one of the concerns from the NHL level. Like it definitely was better for players and their bodies. I think it's more constructive for teams to fly less. It's a grueling schedule. Even staying in the Ritz-Carlton and flying private, for as many games as they play in this tight a time frame, you finish a game at 10 or 10:30 local time, say 10 o'clock in the market you're in, you got to pack everything up, get to the plane, fly potentially, especially a team like the Jets, into other time zones. You're landing at 2 a.m. sometimes, quick sleep, and then you got to play the next day or a day after that. I mean, that takes a real toll on the minds and bodies of everyone involved. And so, I think baseball style schedule makes the most sense if we're just talking about that. But, I think there's some concern about the fatigue for fans that are buying tickets and maybe don't want to watch the same team again and again and risk maybe missing certain players through their markets. And so I think that's ultimately how they ended up where they are. But I suspect we haven't heard the last of this. I mean, a 32-team league, to me, I don't know that you're going to have every team playing every team home and away forever, and so I could see a future tweak to a schedule where, maybe not everyone plays each other home and away or what have you, maybe more interdivisional games, which is something they did entertain, by the way, before landing back on sort of the previous schedule matrix. But I could see a scenario where it just makes sense, again, to have less travel, to have more teams playing each other, and then maybe just not see the East and West teams play each other as much.
Chris, last question for you. We sit here in most of the work in the off season has been done. I mean, there's still some RFAs and everything, but most of the impactful players are usually signed at this point in time. I sit here and I look around the league, and some teams have improved and some teams have diminished, and the majority of teams, I would say, are pretty similar to where they were last year. Aside from the fact that it just hasn't happened in the NHL in almost 30 years, why should anybody bet against the Tampa Bay Lightning?
I would say the fact that they lost their entire second line, or maybe their third line, depending how you viewed the Gord, Goodrow, help me out, Coleman trio. I think that is significant. I mean, look how close they came to not winning a second Stanley Cup. Like, they won Game 7 against the Islanders in the Eastern Conference Final, or in the conference final, 1-0. And Yanni Gord happened to score the goal in that game. They had made fairly quick work of Montreal. But my point is, along the way, it wasn't like they didn't route their way to the Stanley Cup. I mean, things could have went against them. It could have been a bounce or what have you that cost them the chance to win. I mean, I would still put them in the top 2 or 3 teams that I think have the best chance at doing it. But I almost just think the odds of them lining everything up at a time when they did lose some of their special sauce, which is having a really effective line beneath their superstars, that was played a huge role, frankly, in both Stanley Cups they won in the last year. I think that will be difficult to replace, but I'm still not betting against them. I mean, they have one of the best defensemen in the world in Victor Hedman. They have the best goaltender in the world in Andrei Vasilevsky, and they have 3 or 4 or 5 super high-end forwards. So, I mean, it's hard to think of a team that's more complete to me, honestly, that has that ticks every box. I mean, I think a lot of teams, we look at like Winnipeg with their high-end forwards and Hellebuck. Well, then there's still, I mean, if we're stacking their blue line up against the absolute best ones in the league, it falls short, right? I mean, it's not a criticism. Colorado's probably got the best blue line in the league. They got some high-end forwards, but then, the goaltending is a bit of a question mark. I just think that they're the team probably with the fewest questions. But, it's incredibly hard to do it 3 years in a row, and they have had their depth severely weakened. So, I think that would be the case against them. You also wonder about human emotion in this in some level. Like where is the drive at? The gas tank only has so much in it. They finally got their summer this summer, right? Where they could bring the Cup to their hometowns. Last year, because of the pandemic, they had to do everything in and around the Tampa area. So like these guys are still partying right now. Like the Cup is currently in Russia right now, and they should party with it, man. Like you win 2 in a row and you do it through a pandemic. I mean,
I think the Capitals are still partying.
Yeah, I mean they're in a fountain somewhere as we speak, outside of the Nationals game or whatever. I look at it, I'm making some fun of it, but I'm not. I mean, I think you should celebrate your achievements in your life. Life is short. These careers are short. It's so hard to win. I just wonder where their mindset will be at. And look, they go back into a tough division. Like they have, Florida, who had a great season last year. They still have Boston. They have Toronto, Montreal. We'll see where they're at. I'm sure the Lightning will make the playoffs, but it might not be as easy as even they think, entering the year. And so, to win 2 in a row in a 31-team league is insane. To win 3 in a row now that we're 32 teams would be, that would be one for the ages. So, I wouldn't put my bet there. If you guys had a gun to my head and said, you have to make a bet today, I probably am going with Colorado or Vegas with my bet. But the beauty of sports is we get surprised and we'll see what happens.
Chris Johnston is a columnist with the Toronto Star. He will be still on our television screens this coming fall, proving that there's still a role for guys with beards on TV. CJ, thanks for doing this, buddy. Hope you had a great offseason, and we'll do it again real soon.
Thank you. And my dad always said I had a face for newspapers, but I'm proving him wrong here with 4 seasons on hockey in Canada. So, fooled him again.
No way, Chris. You look great on TV.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks,
CJ.
Chris.
You well. Thanks, Chris.
There he goes. Chris Johnston joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Let's take our final commercial break of the morning. We'll come back with some more Jets talk about what CJ had to say, talk about what Logan Stanley had to say before.
We're going to talk about Layla Fernandez as well.
Layla Fernandez. It's Banjo Bowl
Talk about the flies in
Saturday.
here.
Dave is swatting flies left, right, and center.
I'm having my Ted Cruz moment, even though it's
Close the screen door. I mean, what's going on out there?
You're not outside. You've kind of unsanitary conditions are you in?
During the commercial break, I'm taking this little laptop situation outside. I might be doing the rest of the show by the lake down over there.
I'm just happy, Drew, that Dave hasn't swallowed a fly. I've done that before. It's not pleasant.
I was a little worried. I've tried to keep my mouth pretty quiet, pretty tight. So.
Yeah, there you go. Very important things happening here on the program. We'll be right back. You're watching, you're listening, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. My God, Dave, what do you have, a palatial palace there? You know, look at you. Just, I don't know, Ezzy. Are you a little insulted you weren't invited?
I am. I actually didn't know until 9 o'clock last night that Dave was going to be in Clear Lake. I was about to, drive over to Dave M's house here in River Heights. But, I'm at home. I got to give a huge shout out to Naomi. Like, my kids are home right now. The main reason why I do the show at Dave's house, in addition to, spending some extra quality time with Dave M, is that, my kids would be running in. So Naomi's been doing a great job of keeping, the kids out of this office here. And, so I'm just, again, just hoping that Dave doesn't swallow a fly out there.
The fly situation improved now where you are. You shouldn't have slathered yourself in honey this morning. That seems to be your first problem.
We'll see if I can get the last couple.
Okay, there you go. It's good goals ahead for you. Just a reminder, of course, we'll be back next Saturday with another edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, and the post-game shows will be back this year, coming up in October. I'm sure to everyone's regret, we won't be doing post-game shows for the preseason for obvious reasons, because that just isn't going to be happening, unfortunately. I give as much attention to the truth is training camp, from my perspective, is a lot more important. The training camp practices are a lot more important than the actual preseason games, because the preseason games are, for the most part, a mix and match of guys who you expect to play on your team and guys who, really are probably more likely to play on the Moose or to go back to their junior teams, whatever the case may be. It's the practices where I think you get your more bang for your buck in terms of really seeing who's making an impression. Obviously last year, there weren't any preseason games last year, right? I'm trying to remember. I don't think there were any at all. And so Logan Stanley obviously had to make his impression in practice, in training camp, and they did. And he became a regular for the Winnipeg Jets, and he had an impactful season for the Winnipeg Jets. So truly, it is the training camp practices, and we don't have the details of that just yet. Presumably, it'll be at the Iceplex, but I'd be surprised if it was open to the public. I'm not sure. We really haven't.
I guess. My guess is it won't be.
Yeah, my guess is it won't be. It'll still be sort of heavily COVID protocol situation there, at least for the practices. But that is really where you're going to see a lot of the guys step up, those who are able to step up and make an impact, rather than the preseason games themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was going to say Monday, September 20th is probably around, we don't know that, but just, you expect it to be around that date, which you mentioned earlier, Drew. That's, 9 days from now, 10 days from now. But yeah, you're right. I mean, preseason is more important for those players that are on the bubble, right? Like we talked about it, like it's more important for, the guys like Jansen Harkins and Dominic Tananato and, a guy like Austin Pagansky. He can impress the coaching staff playing against fellow NHL players. But yeah, I mean, the preseason, these are just, glorified scrimmages for, the superstars like, Mark Scheifele and Nick Ehlers and Kyle Connor. But, to your point, last year I thought there were a couple of preseason games. It seems like so long ago, but
remember any?
They were either a couple or none at all, and so that really hurt guys that really needed to make an impact. Obviously, it didn't hurt a guy like Logan Stanley, but there just wasn't that they're showcases. That's kind of the word I would say. They're showcases for the younger players and some of those veteran players that are trying to crack the lineup, right? Not for the regulars, but regardless, you're right, Drew. Training camp and in practice is where really all the important work happens. Mm-hmm. And, there are still roster battles, even though, the Jets bring in veterans like Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. There are spots that have been vacated by Mason Appleton and Matty Perreault. So we're obviously going to be covering it. We'll talk about it more, next Saturday and the following Saturdays. But it is intriguing for different reasons, as opposed to talking about, some of the holes on defense. We're talking about some of the holes on the third and fourth lines.
It's true. It is a different offseason as a result of all those, those holes being filled. I mean, last year the talk, entering the season is what role could Ville Heinola play? What role could Dylan Samberg play? Well, hindsight being what it is, showed us that neither of those players really played a significant role for the Winnipeg Jets. And it's hard to see that changing for this coming year unless there's injuries, of course. And then unless a guy like Ville Heinola. There always are injuries. I mean, he's a guy who would need to have a tremendous training camp to break into that what seems to be a fairly set top 6 defense for the Winnipeg Jets. The first exhibition game for the Jets is Sunday, September 26th, and they usually have that first game about 2 or 3 days into the start of training camp. So I would expect training camp to maybe begin around the 23rd, the 22nd of September, maybe that Wednesday, that Thursday, right around there. And usually that first game is
I'm sure the announcement will come out on Monday.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to come out on Monday as well. Some sort of, this whole month of September, I don't know if it's just me, but everything about the first, let's say, 10, 12 days of this month have felt bizarre because Labor Day was so late this year. It's like everything has been pushed back a week. That's just how I've been feeling. I've been sort of off kilter and discombobulated.
And you've been drinking kilter too.
That's true. I've been drinking kilter and off kilter, but I've been discombobulated a little bit this entire month so far, factoring in the Jewish holidays, which were earlier in the week. Happy New Year to you guys, of course. Meant to mention that off the start of the show, and just the way that school started so late this year, and with everything is just sort of delaying me a little bit as a result.
The school starting late, it to me, always throws things off a little bit because you're always expecting school to start like either the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, but when it starts
right after Labor Day
on the 7th, so you're right on that. But I'm discombobulated all the time, Drew. So I mean, I don't know anything else.
We have high hopes for you finally getting through grade 10 though this year, Ezzy. Our fingers are crossed on that front there.
It's been 18 or 19 tries now, and we should give my wife a shout out, new vice principal of Mulvey School in Wolseley. So that's a big change for her, and she's obviously had a long first week, but it's exciting. I say this every year. We've been doing the show for 12 and a half years. Late September, early October. Best time of year with all the sports that's going on. And here we are in early September. You've got the Banjo Bowl coming up, in 3 hours. And then you've got
4 hours.
4 hours. And then you've got Layla Fernandez trying to, win the U.S. Open at 19 years old. I mean, it's always a good time for sports, but especially when you get into, NHL training camp and into the regular season.
The best part is she's playing a player younger than her. She's 19.
And one who was born in Canada.
That's right. Exactly. Raju Kanyu, if I think I got the name, the last name correct. She was born in Toronto, and she plays under the flag of
she's British.
Great Britain now. So it is
kind of like Lennox Lewis, Drew.
Yes, except Lennox Lewis won gold for Canada at the Olympics.
Yes, and who did he beat?
I don't know who he beat.
Riddick Bowe.
I was going to say Riddick Bowe.
Yep.
Okay.
1988.
And by the way, Ezzy also didn't mention the Blue Jays.
That's true. Well, they lost to the Orioles somehow last night.
It's unbelievable.
I know they sweep the Yankees 4 straight. They sweep the A's, at home, and then they lose to the Orioles. Although they have a doubleheader today, if I believe, so that they can maybe make amends for that. The question I had for you guys, talking about the Olympics, and there's been a lot of talk in your.
I don't think we're going to go this year, Drew.
No, I don't think we're going to go either. I don't think we're going to make Team Canada. Maybe next year. Is Mark Scheifele
might be able to make Team China?
And they play who? Canada and the U.S. I think they're in the same pool as Canada and the U.S. And
there's going to be a lot of 16-1 games.
There's talk that it's going to be just outrageously one-sided, as you might imagine. Is Mark Scheifele, a shoe-in for Team Canada in your books?
I think so. I mean, and we're talking about. I mean, we talk about this every time the NHL participates in the Olympics, right? That if you put together a Team Canada 2, that Team Canada 2 could probably beat most teams, right? So I think if Scheifele makes the team, obviously he might have to play on the wing. Let's be honest, guys. I mean, that happens every year that you have like some great centers playing on the wing. But yeah, I mean, Mark Scheifele is arguably a top 10 forward in the entire league, not just top 10 center. I'm talking top 10 forward. So yeah, if you're asking me, I think he'll make the team. Maybe not a shoe-in. Your question was shoe-in. I don't think there's ever shoe-ins. I mean, there's not shoe-ins on the World Junior team for Team Canada, right? So I do think, he let's put it this way. I think there's a good chance that he makes the team.
Yeah, I'm with Ez. I think it's one of those situations where a guy has to be willing to accept whatever role. And we know every guy says the exact same thing. Just the opportunity to play. Like Connor McDavid, guys. If I'm lucky enough to make the team.
Yeah, well, they know the sound.
Every guy says,
I think he might be a shoe-in, Dave. It's pretty good.
Yeah. But the point is, they all say the same thing. And the truth is, it is an honor to play for your country, and we know that. And so you go. It's kind of like what Nate Schmidt said. Can you play goaltender? Sure. Can you play right side defense? Sure. Can you play PK? Sure. You do whatever is necessary to get yourself on that team and to secure yourself a spot. So if that means Mark Scheifele plays on the wing, then he plays on the wing. Is he a shoo-in? I don't think he's a shoo-in. I think he's got a very good chance. He's got to keep working at it. It's probably going to be incentivizing for him this year to really kind of, help cement himself an opportunity. But Canada too. There's no question about it, right? They're so good. So I mean, there's very few. Connor McDavid, obviously, he's a shoo-in. The other guys, you're gonna have to fight for it, and that's not a bad thing.
Crosby might be a shoo-in too.
Crosby, McKinnon. I mean, yes, there's certain guys.
Obviously, there's guys, but
I for Scheifele, I could see
your balls, Dave.
I could see him playing his way off the team. I think that's almost what he has to be concerned about as much as staying on the team, is that he doesn't get passed. If he's just average, and Mark Scheifele average is pretty good, but if he's just average, to start the year or through the first 3 months of the year, it could be a situation where maybe somebody surpasses him. So I have to believe, to what the point that one of you made, is that he's going to use that and the Olympic carrot as a driving force, as something that he's sort of, we know how, he's got blinders on and he's very one track when it comes to focusing on hockey. And that's been a skill set, and that's been an asset for him throughout the course of his career. But I do believe that Scheifele will need to continue to play at a high level throughout the first 3 months of the season to make sure he doesn't get passed over by some other player. Who that other player might be, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that he needs to keep driving fast and driving hard and keeping that as a motivating factor throughout the course of what is going to be, again, back to the regular sort of long slog of an 82-game season, one that is still sort of going to be more compact this year, scheduling-wise, because of the Olympic break. So I do think that in the first few months of the season, that's going to be a driving force for a lot of players, Scheifele and others throughout the NHL.
Well, and that's what I wanted to mention. I think what's as intriguing as, Mark Scheifele trying to crack Teams Canada's roster is the potential for multiple players on the American team coming from the Jets, right? Like Connor Hellebuck, he's on the roster, guaranteed. That is the definition of a shoo-in. He will be one of the American goaltenders. Good chance he's the starting goaltender. Yeah. I think we would all agree Kyle Connor is pretty close to a shoo-in to make the US's roster. And then, you wonder, like, is Blake Wheeler? He was there last time, the U.S. was, or not just the U.S., but the NHL participated in the Olympics. He might be a bit of a long shot to make this team just because of the other players that have emerged, led by Austin Matthews, right? So you wonder if a guy like Wheeler's going to make it. Neil Pionk, I mean, is he in the conversation? I mean, he has to beat out other defensemen. Like, look at Adam Fox. Like, Adam Fox, I think, is a shoo-in coming off of a Norris Trophy, but you're probably going to have to beat out a guy like Ryan McDonough comes to mind. Like, the U.S. has a lot of good Quinn Hughes and Luke Fox. Pardon me, Luke Fox is from Sportsnet. Adam Fox and Quinn Hughes, I think we would all agree, are probably going to be on the U.S. roster. Not to mention, John Carlson and others. We just mentioned 5 defensemen, so it's going to be tough for Pionk to make the roster. I wouldn't be shocked if he made it. I mean, I think he's in the conversation, right? So there's going to be, even a guy like Andrew Copp. I mean, again, it's not a shoo-in, and, he might be a bit of a long shot. I would imagine USA Hockey is probably looking at a guy like Copp to maybe play on the fourth line, right? So, really intriguing. And we got to mention Nick Ehlers, guys. Like, Nick Ehlers,
great job by him qualifying.
Without Ehlers, they don't make it. Like, simply put, they do not make the Olympics. So Nick Ehlers is going to be another guy who knows he's going to be going to the Olympics. So I think that's going to be, very intriguing. Ville Heinola, is he going to be able to crack Team Finland? Dave knows Leon Gavanke. He can make Team Germany, right? So a lot of guys on the Jets or in the Jets organization are potentially going to be going to Beijing. But absolutely, Drew, this is going to look like a normal year. Thank God we can't go through another, shortened season without fans. But the Olympics are definitely going to be a big part of it with the, the big Olympic break that's going to come up in early 2022.
Well, it's amazing to me that, and this will probably be sort of the, getting close to final thoughts for this Saturday morning. It's amazing to me that the NHL has consistently dropped the ball so significantly that at best on best terms.
Hold on a second, Drew. My daughter, did you want to say something about the Jets, Arya? Okay. She's a little bit shy right now. I thought she wanted to mention something.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Hi, Ariel. Nice to see you. If you want to join us on Saturday morning instead of your father, that would probably be fine with the rest of us. But, it's just amazing to me, Dave, that the NHL manages to consistently drop the ball and not have a best-on-best tournament when it's what all the players are clamoring for. It's what all the fans are clamoring for. All they want is a best-on-best tournament in the NHL, where should be an opportunity to make a lot of money. Are just consistently, fail to do it and turn it around for somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I don't think an all-star game quite qualifies to what you're talking about, Drew.
No, it doesn't.
So, I mean, the Olympics right now are that for the NHL, right? That's just the way they are, but it's not ideal. I mean, the truth is, watching games late at night or them having to play games in the middle of the day, it throws off. There's a lot of rhythm, right? I mean, I remember. What Olympics was it as when we watched the game? We stayed up and watched the game.
Was it Nagano?
Yeah, it was in Nagano. I just remember. I think it was like we watched it at Neil's, and I don't think anybody went to bed that night. It was just like insane. So, I mean, sometimes these games aren't the most best suited, but then it becomes a function of whether you have a World Cup again, or, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Canada Cups. I like Canada Cups were the best. The 1987 Canada Cup, in my mind, is probably one of the best hockey tournaments ever played. I think, I still sometimes will go watch. I think it's called the Blades of Summer, and it's one of the best videos you'll watch. It's just Gretzky, Hawerchuk, Lemieux, Messier. I mean, it's insane. It really is. That Canadian team was just the best. So, I mean, yeah, there is room for those types of tournaments for sure, Drew. But like I said, I'd be okay, especially with that old school jersey. That would be that'd be pretty sick. But for right now, this is what the NHL is focused on, and it's what the players want, right? I mean, there is something to be said because these guys have watched, the Canadian guys in 2000 and all the years. I don't want to get every year wrong, but all the years Canada has held the gold high and won gold. That's made an impression, right? That from guys like Gretzky and Crosby, and now to the McKinnons and the McDavids, the Scheifeleys. They want to replicate what they saw, guys that they looked up to achieve. So I think that's why in addition to obviously wearing the Canadian jersey on your chest. So I think there's still a lot of pride in the Olympics and with the opportunity it brings.
Drew, I just wanted to get this in there here before you jump in here. Going back to Dave mentioned the Nagano Olympics in 1998. I think, I don't know if you guys watched that whole game because I believe it started at something like 2 a.m. Or 3 a.m. But what stands out to me, I would have been 15 or 16 at the time. And I remember I wanted to wake up and watch that.
He was so drunk.
Yeah. No, not yet. That was a few years later, Drew. But, what stands out to me, we all remember the Trevor Linden goal that tied it up. But what stands out to me is I slept in and missed the first 2 periods. So when I woke up, it was 2 a.m, Drew, 3 a.m. So usually you're not up at that time, right? And so what stands out to me is waking up and it was already 1-0 for the Czech Republic, and just being so mad and thinking, oh my God, Canada's going to lose this. And then obviously Trevor Linden scores the goal, and then we all remember what happened after with the shootout. But that'll always stand out to me, just how Dominik Hasek absolutely just made it impossible for the Jets, it seemed like, to score aside from Linden. But obviously it got much better in 2002 to 2010. So I agree. I love it. I love that the NHL is going to the Olympics. I love that, the NHL, the NHLPA, the IIHF got it done, and hopefully COVID isn't going to, interrupt this and stop it from happening. But I'm with Dave. I mean, let's be honest, like 2018 was great, but it just wasn't the same without NHL players there.
Not by a long shot. Ezzy will let you get back to your children. They seem to want your attention. Nice to still be loved. Dave will let you get back to your fly swatting ways. I'm going to go spend some quality time with my family as well. Big thank you to Logan Stanley. Big thank you to Chris Johnston for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. In case you missed any of the show, it's available for an immediate replay here on our YouTube channel. It's also available, of course, via podcast. Rate us, review us, subscribe to us, smash the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get the Illegal Curve Hockey Show sent to you automatically each and every week. You'll also get notified anytime we go live here on our YouTube channel. Big thanks to our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, Boston Pizza, and our friends from Seagram's. Support those fine businesses because they support the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and they make this show a reality. Nice to see so many of you join us on this Saturday morning. We'll be back next Saturday, of course, with the latest Illegal Curve Hockey Show. In the meantime, keep it locked and loaded to illegalcurve.com and our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve. If you're on Instagram, so are we. You can also find us there at Illegal Curve as well. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.